I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project. Shall we get rolling?
Let's do it.
Okay. Negative stories get headlines, but there are a ton of good and decent people stepping up to serve in elected office. The Good People Project tells the unsung story of those who wake up every day to do good and selfless work for the American people. New episodes out every Monday. Today's guest is running for state senate in an extremely challenging race to unseat an incumbent, but it is winnable with the right candidate. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is the right candidate to win. She's sharp, incredibly hardworking and motivated, respected in the community, and very strong on the issues. I'm honored to consider her a friend. So, without any further ado, the wise and talented Sally Owens. Sally, how's life?
Holy cow. I'm going to take you everywhere I go. You
Sign me up.
I mean, I don't know that I can meet all those standards, but I'm going to try hard.
Sign me up. I'm your hype man, and I'm super proud of you. One thing that kind of bugs me when I'm doing candidate recruitment is people that say, I'm interested, but gosh, I just don't know if I can win. It's like, no duh.
Right.
If we're going to change things,
right.
You got to do hard things.
Holy cow,
Everybody
no
wants to be the mayor of Mayberry. But the reality is that we got a tough situation here in Illinois, and I'm so proud of you. I'm excited for you for stepping up.
Thanks.
It's a tall order, but we got to do hard things if we're going to get Illinois back on track.
That's exactly right. And one of the things I have said to many of our Republican GOPs, I'm in 4 counties, and so it's not just my friends here in Peoria that I've known for years, but I'm meeting new Republican friends all across my district. And one of the things when I talk to someone is to say, are you willing to make room? Are you willing to make room in your party for someone who is perhaps not 100% agreeing with everything you agree with? And when I have those conversations with some of them, they're like, well, here's my position on this, and I'm like, yeah, I see your position, and I'm most of the way there. I see why we're aligned. I see why we're in the same party, and then I'll say, but it's kind of like a marriage. You're not going to agree 100% with everybody
Yes.
all the time.
Right.
And so my question to a lot of the people are you going to make room for me? Because I'm a strong candidate. I'm hardworking. I'm devoted. I want nothing but the best for my community. And I'm really tired of not getting the best, but paying the absolute most in taxes.
That's exactly right.
It's crazy. If we're going to pay the most in taxes, we should be getting the Cadillac version of government. We should be getting the best of the best. And if that was the case, I maybe wouldn't run. But that's not the case. And we got to do better than what we got. Yeah.
So I guess before we go too far, you're not a newcomer to the community, but you're a newcomer in some political circles. So maybe just a quick 90-second, 60-second elevator pitch about who's Sally Owens.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in the St. Louis area. And I went to college in Missouri and ended up working in St. Louis. I ran a small marketing firm for 16 years. When I started with the company, they were right around $500,000. When I left the company, they were a $65 million marketing company. Yeah, we were really in the right place at the right time. We had a challenging time, and the kind of work that we were doing was transitioning to a technology-based industry. I don't know, people who remember when the post office automated, the bulk of our work was done through the post office, and we had to be able to automate. In a period of about 18 months, we lost more than 50% of our competitors because they weren't able to automate. And so we were in the right place at the right time, but we also had to be able to pivot to take advantage of the growth and the opportunity because of technology. So that was a great experience for me. And then after 16 years, I left that business to move to Peoria to get married and start my family. So Illinois, Central Illinois, is where I chose to raise my family. It's a great place to raise my kids. We had a great experience here. And during that time, I left a thriving career. I was the president of the company, and I moved to Central Illinois to start my family. I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And so a lot of what I did was business consulting. It's hard to come to a smaller community and say, okay, where's the next president job? It doesn't happen that way. And so I found a bit of a niche where I was going in and helping small businesses meet their goals, and I could do that while I was raising my family. So I would, maybe take on a 2-year contract or an 18-month contract while a company was looking for a CFO or looking for a president or operations person, or in some instances dissolving the business. I was with a company that provided medical personnel to the corrections industry. So I've walked through a lot of the jails and prisons here in Illinois. Yeah, which is always fun to say because it surprises people when they meet me.
You could kind of start a conversation like, well, one thing I learned when I was in prison.
Right,
and
exactly.
Like just really grab the attention.
And I mean, what I like to say is, some prisons are better than others.
Yeah.
So when I was with that particular company, the partners were separating, and so the partners one of the partners hired me to help dissolve, to represent them in the dissolution of this partnership. And the other partner was really an adversary to me. I mean, this is a situation that ended in, I think I was in court for 2 days straight testifying to try and get this dissolved appropriately, but we had to renegotiate contracts. We had to try and determine exactly what a fair and equitable dissolution was. And towards the end of it, one of the partners came to me and said, we're adversaries, but you are a fair and honest person, and when this is all over, we need to go get a drink. And I kind of took it as, we'll see. But I tell you what, a couple months later, he called me and he said, I think enough time has passed. I think we need to, get together. And so I met with him and we had a great conversation. And this goes back years ago, but we had a great conversation. And I saw him recently, and I shared with him that when we had that conversation after the fact, and, you've kind of gone into battle and you ended up with whatever situation you ended up with, and for him to come to me and say, you were fair, you were honest, you were an adversary, but I respect you, was for me kind of a highlight of my career. And I shared that with him, and he said, yeah, I still think about that too. Do you want a job?
Yeah.
So, for me, that was a career highlight.
Yeah, and I think that strength is probably the most important strength that you need to have to come into a situation as an elected official where you're in the super minority, but you're trying to get things done. Because the reality is, for us in the House, there's 40 Republicans. It takes 60 votes to pass. So if you can't get 20 people on the other side to help you, your bills aren't going anywhere. And so the way that you get that done isn't by taking your sword out at every opportunity and being a bomb thrower. Absolutely. It's about having respectful dialogue. And I kind of think about it like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. Fierce competitors on the court in the arena, but then you walk off and you've got a mutual respect for one another. And so many of my Democrat colleagues, I really respect as people, even if I fiercely disagree with them on the issues. And I think that, when you can walk out of the arena and then maybe go have a beer together,
right,
or sit in their office and chat about kids, vacations, whatever, and they start to realize this person's here for the right reasons. They have integrity. We disagree, but iron sharpens iron like one man sharpens another, and they want to have better bills. And so if they recognize you as somebody who gives them honest feedback that pushes them to point out blind spots that they have or things that they didn't appreciate that impacts your constituents just like it impacts theirs, then I think you really start to get viewed as somebody who's not so much an adversary, but just as, a partner that gives honest, fair critique.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that really has been the goal of when I was a consultant. I'm coming in usually as a third party, and sometimes, you don't bring a consultant in because everything's going great.
Right.
I mean, that's just not when you hire a
right.
consultant. You bring someone in because you're having a struggle, and sometimes with a family business. I've had a couple of clients who had family businesses, and sometimes, that cousin wasn't the best hire, and it's hard, it's going to really upset the Thanksgiving table if you make a change there. And so bringing a third party in to make some of those tough choices is the way you solve that problem. And so I've often been brought into a situation where you have to have tough conversations. And I say this all the time. It is easy to deliver good a good message. It's easy to
Everybody
say
wants
good
to be
news.
Santa
Yeah,
Claus.
we won the game,
Yeah.
right? We won the game. Yay! We get to do this. Fantastic. It takes courage and skill to deliver bad news or a challenging topic. And I've had to do that a lot. I've had to do that a lot in my professional career. So for me, I see it as, let's get to the other side.
Yeah.
And you can't get there. One of the stories that comes to mind hits home with you. One of my first volunteer activities here in Central Illinois was with Youth Farm. I was on the Youth Farm board and worked alongside with your dad and your grandfather and some amazing, amazing people doing great work out at Youth Farm. But we got to a point after about 15 years of my involvement, we got to a point where we had 2 agencies here in town. We are fighting over the same clients. We're fighting with the state of Illinois to get contracts. And we all kind of had to look at each other and say, what's in the best interest of the children? What's in the best interest of the clients? How are we going to serve them the best? And both of those organizations are funded substantially by donors. And so how can we be the best stewards of those hard to come by donor dollars, right? And we had to have some tough conversations. And I remember very well, your dad was in the car. He was managing Kentucky Fried Chickens, and he was on the way to, I think, Iowa.
Yeah.
And he's in the car, and I'm talking to him, and I'm a bit tearful. And I said, I just don't think we're doing the right thing. I think we have to make tough decisions. And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm at Apple's Bakery. You remember Apple's Bakery on Knoxville? And he said, I'm on my way. And he turned around and he drove to Apple's Bakery, and we had one of the toughest conversations I've ever had to have because we're just into it in our elbows. But we decided in that moment what the best thing for the clients, how could they have the best service, and what would be the best thing for those donor dollars, the best steward, would be if we could merge with Children's Home, that would be the best. And we thought, do we think that can happen? And what conversations need to happen? And so I picked up the phone and I called Arlene, who at the time was the president of Children's Home, and she said, yeah, come in and talk to me, but you need to come today or tomorrow. And I did. I went in that afternoon, and she said, here's the deal. Yesterday I gave my notice. I'm going to be gone in about 30 days. So if
She was director of Children's Home or Youth Farm?
She was director of Children's Home.
Got it. Oh, wow.
She was a director at Children's Home. And she said, this is confidential. I've given my notice. I think she was moving to Wisconsin. And if you want to get this done, you're going to have to get it done in 30 days. And which if anyone who knows anything about doing a deal like this, they're absolutely, how's that going to happen? We had to renegotiate the state contracts. We had to get everybody on board. I mean, I literally got in my car and drove to, there were, I'm trying to remember, like 5 men of your grandfather's era that started Youth Farm. I had to go and have conversations with them and to talk about delivering bad news.
Yeah.
Bad news to your grandfather. I had to tell him that 40 years, your dream and all the hard work you've done over 40 years is about to look entirely different than what you thought was going to have happen. And so I went around and had those conversations with all those people, and everybody said, we agree the best thing for the clients and the best way to be a good steward of those dollars is to combine those efforts.
And there's such a duty of care when you're working with donor dollars, just like when you're working with taxpayer dollars.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And, hey, if it's your personal money and you earned it and you want to go put it all on Red 7 and see what happens, this is a free country. I think that's really stupid, but that's your money. That's your call. When you're spending somebody else's money, we've got to remind ourselves in the Illinois House when we pass a $53.1 billion budget, which is 40% bigger than the $39 billion budget we had when J.B. Pritzker came into office, that every single dollar we spend came out of the pocket of somebody who earned it.
That's a burden. Honestly, that is a burden, and I take that very seriously. And when I hear things like, our our senators, I hate to say it, my opponent, voted for a bill that gave him a 14% raise last year. A 14% raise last year. And then again this year with the new budget, another 5%. I think that's 20, do the math, that's 20% in 2 years. Mm-hmm. That's offensive to me. That's absolutely offensive. And those are my tax dollars. But you know what? I'm even more offended for the people who are on, a fixed income and they're getting a 2.5% raise each year.
Right.
And that's just.
And what's even worse is that we're in last place in every metric. Outward migration, economic growth, unemployment. If we were clicking on all cylinders and we say, hey, you know what, we're kicking butt for the people. Just like in the private sector, if you're doing a great job, you get paid more.
Absolutely.
In the political space, we let people fail up, and when you reward inadequacy, the reality is you get more of what you incentivize.
Absolutely, and that's what drove me to do this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very frustrating. My daughter Lucy, and she just graduated from college, and she's not going to stick around in Illinois. She's not looking for jobs in Illinois. I mean, if she could find one that she wanted, I mean, that's just not what she's doing.
Yeah.
And when I look at our young people, the last statistic I was given was our high school graduates. 25% of our high school graduates didn't go to work, didn't go to college, didn't go to the military. 25% of our high school graduates are sitting on mom's couch. They're sitting on the sofa, and they're not excited about going to work. They're not excited. I mean, when I was that age, there was nothing I wanted more than to get out of mom's house, get some freedom, and get some money and live on my own. That was something I look forward to, and our kids aren't engaged that way right now. And a lot of it has to do them being prepared for the work. Being prepared to enter the workforce. And the other is entering the workforce, having the opportunity to work. We need to close that gap.
Yeah.
I ended my career. I retired. I was a business consultant, OSF, Hospital Systems. OSF hired me as a consultant for about 5 years, and then hired me full-time during that time period. Then they hired me full-time to work in their women's health strategy. And a large part of my job was going into it was almost all community outreach, but a large part of it was going into our underserved communities and trying to identify care gaps and then trying to figure out how to close them. And people would ask me all the time because I had to go work with all of the departments, because we might identify a care gap in neurology that also had to do with physical therapy. And so, we had to try and get those two, sometimes silos, or those two departments to work together to try and close that care gap. And people would ask me all the time, well, what's your budget for that? And I'd laugh because my budget was double zero.
Yeah.
I had no budget. So they're like, go in, identify the care gaps, and let's see if we can close them. But you have no money to do it.
Yeah.
And it worked great, because what I learned during that process is that if you throw money at a problem, people who are good at chasing money rise to the top. If you have no money, you get clever.
Yes.
You look around and say, who sees this problem? And people are like, yeah, we see the problem. And you're like, who wants to solve the problem? And people are like, we want to solve the problem. It's like, all right, let's go figure out how to solve the problem.
Yes.
And people get passionate about being part of the solution and stop sitting there complaining about the problem.
Yeah.
And that's where I got really excited. I mean, for me, that's like winning at a board game. That's like you put the pieces together, you figure it out, you come up with a solution, and you all sit around and high-five each other and go, yay, we did this. And then those people who are invested in that solution are invested in it continuing. And I can even jump back to the children's home. I mean, take a look at the Youth Farm campus. I think your grandfather would be very proud of what he started there. I think he'd be very proud of how that has taken off.
Yeah. And people, they want to hear good news, but they just want to hear the truth.
Right.
Thomas Sowell said, When somebody cares about themselves, they tell you what you want to hear. But when somebody cares about you, they tell you the truth. And that's so true. We see it in politics. You walk up to a door. The easy thing to do is say, okay, what does this person want to hear?
What side are you
The
on?
hard thing to do is say,
Yeah.
this is what I stand for. And the reality is people can identify authenticity. And I think a lot of times folks would rather say, I'm 90% with that guy, but I really trust him, as opposed to, I think I'm 100% with him, but I also think I might have kind of got sold a
Right.
bill of goods on that.
Right. I have a lot of friends in the car business, so I don't want this to, but that used car salesman,
Sure.
they get such a bad rap.
Yeah.
But yeah, that you don't want to feel like you're getting sold something that, after election day or after you get inaugurated, they're like, oh my God, he did what?
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that situation where you got excited about someone and then they let you down.
Yeah. And going back to your initial story about just being adaptable with this marketing firm, I think is so important for somebody that's getting into politics, because we have got to be adaptable. And there's always going to be new information coming. And that means that a candidate who has the right answer, the best answer today, is probably going to be a different answer than it was 10 years ago, because our environment's changing. And so we need to be adaptable broadly, but I think we also need to be adaptable specifically and know that a person who's going to win Sally Owens' Senate seat here, that's a 50-50 D+5 type district, is a heck of a lot different than the type of person who's the right candidate for my Senator Neil Anderson's seat.
Absolutely.
That's probably an R+30. And if we're not adaptable, we say Republicans are all the same. We can put, swap anybody out, play musical chairs, put them in this seat. But the reality is we've got to have people that can adapt and are the right candidate to represent the district. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're people
Right.
sent there to be a representative on behalf of those that we represent.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's exactly right. My district is complicated. And just to let your audience understand what my district is, it's mostly Peoria County, the area of Peoria, and then if you're familiar with the area of Central Illinois, you've got Highway 74 that connects Peoria to Bloomington Normal. So I like to describe it like a barbell.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Peoria County, and then it dances down Highway 74 and then Bloomington Normal. And so what that means is we've got Peoria, which is probably Democratic leaning, but has a lot of Republican residents there, and then you cross over into East Peoria in northern Morton as you go down Highway 74. So that's Tazewell County, which is really very strong Republican conservative voters. And then we enter into Woodford County, where we pick up Carlock and Goodfield and in those areas. And that's an even more conservative base. And then we jump into Bloomington Normal, which then starts to get, again, very, a little bit more liberal. And there's some pockets over there that are very liberal. And so you say, how does one person represent those areas earnestly? And I think I'm absolutely the best candidate for that. I am a moderate Republican, and some people say, what does that mean? And when it comes to some of the social issues, I may not be 100% far right on some of those issues, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'm happy to be challenged, and some of my more conservative Republican friends do it on a regular basis, challenge me on that. Happy to have those conversations. But then when it comes to being fiscally responsible, I see not just from my business background, not just from my own life experience, not just from managing my checkbook at my home, but I see that just from, it's not sustainable. We cannot keep having our policies drive businesses out of our state and drive people out of our state and expect this to continue and be a sustainable community. It's not possible, period. It is not possible. And when I hear some of my opponents and especially right now the governor say, I'm challenging the census data, it's not accurate. Well, okay, do you want to challenge U-Hauls records, because they're the ones that are reporting that, you know, and anyone who's rented a car, trying to even just rent a car on one way, they don't do it because nobody brings their cars back to Illinois.
Yeah.
Everybody's going out. Everybody is leaving. So
Yeah.
you've got U-Haul, you've got the realtor agencies, you've got all of these, IRS. The IRS just released, you know, where people, when you move, your tax return moves. They released it.
Yeah, and it was several $1 billion that they said that we've lost. And
that's fact. That's
Yeah.
not up for discussion.
Yeah,
That's a fact.
So instead of arguing the population data, why don't you just accept that it's the truth and realize that we've got to have policies that don't chase people away?
Exactly.
I tell this story probably a lot more than I should because I don't know if it's that great a story. But I was at a grocery store in Sarasota, Florida, and I had my Cubs hat on, and a guy came up to me and said, "Are you from Illinois?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Wow, you know, we just moved down here. We love it here, but, you know, we couldn't stand the ideology taught in our public schools, and we couldn't afford the taxes anymore, so we got out and we came here." And I'm like, I didn't even have to ask you. You know, I could have said, "Oh, you moved here. I bet it's because of taxes. I bet it's because of regulation. I bet it's because of education."
Well, and the other thing is, you know, don't think we're so naive. Don't think your public is so naive. Do you think we don't see the yard signs, the for sale signs? Our neighbors are moving. We're not making it up.
Yeah.
Our neighbors are moving. When I'm door knocking and I see so many for sale signs, you know, people are moving in their vacant homes. It's not like, oh gosh, we put our house on the market because we're moving down the street. No, these have been homes that have been vacant for a while.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm on the revenue committee, and a gentleman gave us a presentation about, you know, Illinois' expected revenue and how much tax earnings we would have. And I asked the question, do we have a calculation about how much money we've lost for people that have migrated out of the state? And afterwards, one of my colleagues across the aisle, who I'll remain nameless because I do respect her a lot, but she said to me, "You know, I always hear you guys talk about people moving out of the state, but what about people that move into the state? Like the family down the street from me from Wisconsin, they moved here." And I'm like, I'm not saying that nobody moves here. I'm saying on the net, there's more people that are leaving. And just kind of to hear them dance around this issue of, well, how can you say people are leaving? I know one example of somebody coming. Okay, we're going to make our policy based on anecdotal evidence. We're going to make it based on facts and reality. Okay, one thing I wanted to ask you. You've reached a point in your life where you could be doing whatever you want, and you decided to go on this political journey. So are there things in your upbringing or just things throughout your life that have always made you want to do this? Or was this just kind of a light bulb that went off that made you wake up one day and say, let's go for it?
Yeah, so I've always, my family upbringing, we always volunteered. We always, it was just part of our family culture growing up. And I know we're going to have to let the dog out. Would you mind letting the dog out?
Somebody's hungry.
I know. She's like, let me out. I'm ready to go take a whirl around the neighborhood. I mean, you know, I've got demands on my time. I've got people who need me.
Yeah.
My dog.
I got squirrels that need chasing, Mom.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So your question about what drove me to politics is, you know, I've always been active. I've always been an active in the community service. I've always been a volunteer. I've been on boards. I've been on the front lines of organizations like Youth Farm, like Children's Home, like ICC, our Illinois Community College, you know, St. Jude's, Boys and Girls Club. You know, I've participated, Kiwanis. I've always been drawn to that. When I was in St. Louis, I was a member of the junior league there, and they made it very easy to do community service. So for me, it was just part of who I am. But when this opportunity came about, I did run before I ran for county board, and I was frustrated with, you know, the lack of options. I mean, sometimes on our school boards, we don't have enough candidates. And so we're out after the fact scrounging for people to volunteer. And a lot of it is because we have made such a tumultuous environment out of politics and out of volunteering. We discourage people because it looks mean or it looks negative. And that's certainly not what I'm about, certainly not the way I want to operate. But I looked around, and all of a sudden I was realizing we're not challenging a lot of our positions. We're not challenging a lot of that. We're not. We have no options. We have no options.
Yeah.
So if you like what's going on and you think everything is great, I suppose that's okay. But if you're sitting around going, this isn't great. We're paying more. We're getting less. We're headed in a bad direction. I'm worried about the future for my children. My children are leaving the state. Then you have to say, we need better options. That's the point where you say, we need better options. And so I did run, and in that instance, I door knocked the heck out of my community, and I learned a lot about my community and a lot about what their frustrations were, and I learned that I was onto something. I'm not alone. But a lot of people don't know how to make that change. And what I learned, if you look at my resume, I mean, I'm pretty qualified. People tell me not to share this.
Gosh, we need it so badly.
We do. We really
Qualified
do.
people to step up.
Yeah, and people tell me not to share this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Break rules, Sally. Let's go.
I'm doing it.
We're breaking news here on the Good People Project.
Here it is. This I'm going to be 59 years old this year.
Oh my gosh.
I know, 59. You know how close that is to 60?
You're
really
right there.
close. It's really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be 59, and so in my lifetime, I have accomplished a lot of things. I've had a lot of experiences, and I've got my master's degree, my MBA in hospital administration. So I understand a lot about what's going on in our community, but I also understand how to fix things. I've seen solutions. I've seen what it looks like to solve problems with no money. And I think that we need a little bit more of people who understand or who have successful business backgrounds.
Yeah.
Have not been career politicians. That's someone who's been in office for a long time and is making decisions to further their career, not necessarily to do what's the right thing for the community. And people argue what that is, and is it good, is it bad? I'm a big fan for the term limits. I'm thinking if you can't get it done in 3 terms. Then it's time to step aside and let someone else come in.
Yeah, and you're not so conceited to think that there's not somebody else as capable that can pick up where you left off.
There's so many people smarter than me. That's the one thing I've learned in this process. I'm surrounded by smart people. We
see these people in seats for 20 years, and their argument might be, well, who else is going to do it? Well, you're not Jesus Christ. I mean, there's 216,000 people in a Senate district. I mean, there are qualified people.
You've got a business background. What's your succession plan? That's the question I'd ask that politician. Yep. Shame on you for not developing our next leader.
Yep.
Shame on you. Let's get going. Let's build a really great community. And you don't do that by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really applaud a lot of the people on our side of the aisle that just about all of them have another job. My Senator Neil Anderson's a full-time fireman.
Right.
Bill Howder's an anesthesiologist. Ryan Spain works at OSF. Dennis Tipsword's the chief deputy sheriff. I teach at Bradley and at UIS. I mean, when you do that, it makes you so untouchable because I don't have to vote a certain way. I took a 50% pay cut to leave CAT to do this.
Right.
If I vote a certain way and that means they kick me out the next time, great. I served. I did what I was there to do. I had integrity, and I'll go make more money somewhere else. If you're planning on this being your career, then the lobbyists and the bureaucrats really got you over a barrel because they know you kind of got to go along with them or else there goes your job.
You're not working for the pension.
That's right. I've declined it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but when you take a look at politicians who say, yeah, I deserve a 15% raise, I deserve a 20% raise over 2 years.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset than when you go into it saying, this is a part-time job, which it is. This is a part-time job. This is a part-time job, and I'm going to do the best I can for my community. It's a totally different mindset.
Yeah. And
then how do I get reelected? And how many PACs can I take money from?
So you've been on this journey for running for Senate for a year? How long? 9 months?
It has been almost a year.
Yeah.
So I filed and really started campaigning in October, in September, I guess, really. So it's been almost a year. And I'll tell you, when I first started talking about it, when someone first approached me and said, hey, do you want to run this district? I mean, I've lived here 25 years. My opponent's been in office almost 20. I know him. I mean, nice guy.
Yeah.
I just don't agree with how he votes.
Yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I said, gosh, I'm not sure it's winnable, which is what a lot of people have said. I'm not sure it's winnable. And they said, we think it is. Will you come talk to us? And I said, well, sure, I'll talk to you about it. And they laid down, the why they thought it was winnable, and that now is a good time. They've redistricted, so there are many people in the district, especially if you're in Woodford County or McLean County. This isn't a name because he's only been been your senator for 2 years, so not a name and we think that's a positive. And I had just run a campaign, so I knew about precincts, I knew about voters, I knew about voter turnout, I knew about some of these statistical information. And I got my MBA. I'm a trained accountant. That was my undergrad. I was an accountant, so I'm a bit of a spreadsheet geek.
Gosh, we could use more spreadsheet
I
geeks
love
in Springfield.
spreadsheets. I love to clean. Weird thing. I love to clean cars. I love to clean closets, and I love a good spreadsheet. I mean, that's like my heyday would be if I got to clean my closet, clean my car, and then work on a spreadsheet all day.
A vote for Sally is a vote for order.
There you go.
And tidiness.
There you go. But yeah, so I got the spreadsheet out. I lined up all the precincts. I lined up all the votes, and I started looking at it, started picking it apart, and started really doing the math and how that would work. And then I got together with another group of people and said, this is the data I have. Do you think this is winnable? And they said, absolutely. And kind of the strategy being, we have to engage our voters. We did a big misservice to our population, and I've written some articles about it, about voter integrity. Through my county board race, I got very involved in voter integrity and very involved in Peoria County's Board of Election, and I genuinely believe that the people there are working very hard. We've got some great people on the board and on the staff there that are working very hard to provide honest voting experience. But I got pretty involved in it, and we did a disservice because the Republican Party came out probably in 2016 and started to say, the voting system is rigged and the voting system is bad and we can't trust the voting system. And I'm not saying that's not the case outside of central Illinois, but I can tell you in Peoria County, in Tazewell County, in Woodford County, in McLean County, and then Bloomington actually is a separate has a separate voting board. But I can tell you in my area, that's not the case.
Well, and why would you go out and tell a group of people that their vote doesn't get counted? I mean, that's the whole reason why we lost that Georgia Senate seat, because it went to a runoff, and then we had people saying, oh, it was rigged, the election was stolen. And then you saw all these people say, well, if my vote doesn't matter anyway, I guess I'll stay home. And
that's exactly what we saw.
It does count. You got to go vote.
And I talk to people all the time. There's no doubt that in Illinois and in my district, and certainly in my race, your vote's going to count.
Yeah.
This will be a close race.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's a slam dunk by any means. It will be a close race. Every vote's going to count. And I did a number of things during my race to encourage voter turnout. And I tell you, I learned this when I was door knocking. I'd knock on the doors, and I don't mean to pick on my fellow females, but I heard it more from the women who would say, I didn't vote because, I was told I needed to do it on election day. And when it came to election day, my day got away from me, and I just didn't make it to the polls. And let me tell you, I remember as a working mom, if any one of 6 people got sick that day, I didn't work. If I got sick, I didn't work. If my child got sick, I didn't work. I have 2 kids. If my babysitter got sick, I didn't work. If my babysitter's kids got sick. I didn't work. I get it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things, the dog throws up on the carpet in my days. I have a wrench in my day. Someone forgot their homework. Someone forgot their lunch. There are a million things that chip away at our time and our day. And if you have a very small window to vote, a lot can happen to defer you from voting. So that's another reason that, we need to have faith in our early voting system, which I do.
Yeah.
But that was one of the reasons. The other reasons that I heard was, I didn't have time to research. And oftentimes we've got topics on our ballot that are double negatives, and they do that on purpose. So if I vote yes, am I really voting no? Or if I vote no, am I really voting yes? That's done somewhat on purpose to mislead and make you really think about it. But I didn't have time to research, and I didn't want to make a mistake, so I didn't vote. And then the third reason I hear, and I hear it just as much from men as I do from women, is I didn't vote because I knew my vote didn't count. And let me tell you, get the mail-in ballot. Get the mail-in ballot. It shows up on your doorstep. You know it's time to vote. You don't have to, wonder, when do I vote? It shows up on your doorstep. You know it's time to vote. It gives you exactly what the ballot looks like. Put it in your lap, get on the computer, do your research, determine how you want to vote. If you still want to vote in person, which I think is great, take your ballot with you. Just because you have the mail-in ballot doesn't mean that you can't vote in person. Take your ballot with you to the voting polls. Vote in person, but you've got it there. And as much as I don't want to say, I want to say that our voting system is safe, but the reality is there are people, bad actors on both sides that are trying to upset it. And I have heard from a handful of people, they went to go vote that day, and they were told that they had already voted.
Yeah. And
that does happen. I mean, these were very vocal, very conservative voters, and someone had gone in and voted early for that individual because they know that voting pattern is to wait until election day. And so in that instance, that voter then has to go through lots of rigmarole to get their vote to count. They have to prove who they are. They have to challenge it. There are steps they have to take to discount that previous, bad vote, right? And so I was talking to them about that, and I said, but that's merely a case for voting early, truly, voting early. Because if you vote early, you ensure your vote counts. That's you. You made the vote. If a bad actor comes in behind you and says, oh, I'm Travis Weaver, I'm here to vote, they're going to go, wait a minute, you already voted. Yeah. Well, a bad actor is not going to go, well, that's not me, and let me fill out the paperwork, and here's my driver's license. They're going to go, whoa.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Let me go to my car.
Right. Yeah, they're done. They're done. The gig is up.
Yeah.
So go in and vote early. And I tell you, the second thing that people don't realize is that as a candidate, when you vote early, you save me money.
Right.
I stop chasing you because I get a notice that says not how people voted.
Right.
Absolutely not how people voted. But I get a list of people who have already voted. So I can take them off my call list. I can take them off my mail list. I can take them off my walk list. So people aren't knocking on your doors. People aren't, sending you mailers, and they're not calling and texting you because you've already voted. So I certainly tell all my friends, but I tell everybody I can, vote early. It saves time for you. It ensures that your vote gets counted. And for a candidate like me, it saves me money. And so then all of a sudden, when you take a look at bringing voters back to the polls, I think we're in a presidential election. Who knows what's going to go on today's the 19th, 18th. Yeah. So here we are, July 18th, and we're not 100% sure who's going to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, who knows what's going to go on with that. But, we've got to bring voters back to the poll.
Yeah. I always tell folks, if you feel like your vote doesn't matter because Illinois is going to be blue or 150 million people are going to vote for president, so what the heck difference does one person make? The reality is, when you're voting for president, your vote probably doesn't really matter, right? Illinois is going to be blue. But you don't go to vote for the president. you get like 20 votes. You get a vote for your state rep, your state senator, your sheriff, your treasurer, your clerk, your county board person, anybody who's running statewide. And while you're there, cast your vote for president. Sure, absolutely go for it. But for these local elections, the one that actually impact your day-to-day life the most, you can move the needle in. A great example here in Peoria, Rita Ali, who's the current mayor, won her mayoral race by 41 votes over Jim Montalongo. And ironically, when Rita ran for 5th District Council, she lost that race by one vote, one single vote. And so, if you think your vote is not going to move the needle, for president, frankly, it probably isn't. But for these local races, get out and vote, because you don't just have one vote. You get a vote on the entire ballot. And on some of those races, you can really be the one deciding vote.
Absolutely. And like I said, I've written articles about it in a very bipartisan way, because the reality is my district shares a similar statistical layout as the state of Illinois. We're about 23% straight Republican voters, voters that go in and if there's an R, they get the vote. And we have about 25% straight Democratic voters. They go in and go straight down the ballot one way. But we've got 52% of my population, of my voters in my district, are willing to vote for the right person. They're willing to cross the aisle. They don't care so much about party. They care more about the right person. And so, people on my team, I tell them all the time, I'm like, I wake up every day and go, where's my 52%?
I love it.
Where's my 52%? And they're right next door sometimes. I mean, I've got a very diverse, I live in a very diverse neighborhood, and I live in it with a very diverse group, and I have diverse friends. I mean, I have one of my dearest friends is actually running a political campaign for a Democrat here in Illinois. And I have civilized debates, and we disagree.
Yeah.
We disagree, but that doesn't mean we're not friends.
Yeah, it's healthy discourse is so good for society, because we're wrong on issues and they're wrong on issues. And if you don't ever open your mouth and have the conversation, we just spend all of our time thinking we got all the right answers. And the reality is, when you come together and you have to make compromise and you push on each other, that's when things start to get a lot better. That's when the best answer comes. If everybody believes just like you, you're going to get the same old solutions. And I've said this for a long time. Part of the problem with our legislation is we're not getting the right people to the table. And solutions aren't found with me. I think I'm really good at it. I think I have a history of bringing good solutions to the table, but it's not because I'm the solution. It's because I'm pretty good at bringing people together, and I'm really good at asking for help. I mean, one of the things that I've learned through this process is I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people, and a lot of smart people that don't always agree with me. And if you're it goes back to your days of school. Like, if you're gonna do a research project, you don't go chase what you already know. You go and seek to learn what you don't know. You seek to understand what you don't already understand. And that's how you come up with the best solutions. Are there a couple of issues where you've been able to leverage your network, where you feel like you've really gotten sharp on an issue because you've got that contact, and instead of you doing the hours of research, you can say, hey, this is a ag question. I know so-and-so, and I can get a quick answer and really be sharp quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got great organizations. We've got absolutely great organizations. Our ag community is really tight. The Farm Bureau does a great job. I had a couple of questions about some farm animals. I have my own herd of canine here, four-legged creatures here at the house. But I mean, I need to talk. We're going to talk about the cattle. Then I need some help.
Yeah, and the district you're going to represent is so diverse. I mean, absolutely. Manufacturing footprint is huge. 2 colleges. Is ICC?
No, it's
more than 2?
It's more than 2. Oh yeah, I actually have 5. So
oh my.
So I've got Bradley, which is a great private university. Also have Illinois Wesleyan,
Oh, wow.
another great private
Yep.
college institution, ISU, which is huge. Very proud to have ISU. A lot of my kids' friends are on campus there, so I'm on campus once a month. So it's fun to go in there, and I always see someone go, "Mrs. Owens, what are you doing here?" I always say, "Your mother sent me, and she wants to make sure you're doing your homework." But that's 3, and then I've got Heartland College, which
Okay.
is a community college in McLean County, and then we've got ICC
Yep.
in East Peoria, and then the nursing colleges.
Yep.
So lots of education going on right here in my district.
Well, and it's it's probably a great microcosm for the entire state. Between you've got some urban areas, you've got some rural areas, you've got manufacturing, you've got farming, you've got education. I mean, it really is. It really runs the gamut.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to break this up a little bit so we're not
Okay.
totally talking about politics. This is sort of a curveball for you, pun intended.
I'm ready.
So in baseball, they have walk-up music. You go up to
Yep.
the plate, they play your favorite song, it gets you hyped up, ready to go. So if you had walk-up music for your life, what would be your plate song?
Oh yeah. So so Diana Ross and the Supremes. I'm a junkie. I'm an absolute junkie. One
love
of my
it.
favorites, and it has been. It was a little bit before my time, but always a huge fan of Diana Ross.
Okay, I've got one more random question before I let you get back to your day. When they make a movie about the life of Sally Owens, who do you think is going to play you? And I'm asking this question specifically because I haven't answered. I'm curious if we're going to get the same one.
Okay. So it's funny. I've never thought about this, and this one person came to mind, and just so happens to have some brown hair. But do you know that there is a Sally Owens character?
This is what I was going to say.
Yeah. So I didn't. I had to
Yeah.
actually watch So there's a Sally Owens character. So
Yes.
Sandra Bullock.
Yes.
Yeah. So I Googled myself. Someone said, "Oh, have you Googled yourself?" I'm like, "No, why would I?" And they're like, "Oh, no, you got to Google yourself." So
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. So it wasn't long. Maybe in the last 2 years, perhaps, I Googled myself. And Sandra Bullock shows up. I'm like, cool.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of some questions. I Google Sally Owens. The first thing that pops up is Practical Magic with Sandra Bullock.
Right.
And I'm like, so Sally Owens, which is kind of funny that Sandra Bullock is the character, because I feel like if there was actually somebody who's going to portray you, Sandra Bullock, I mean, kind of, you got similar hair. I mean, you kind of got sort of a similar vibe. And she's
no
awesome.
complaints
and,
here. I'm not complaining. I mean, I think that's, wow, holy cow.
Yeah, I love it. Sandra Bullock. What an honor to be in the
Set
studio.
the bar
with you.
high.
Yes.
Set the bar high.
Okay, before we sign off, if listeners want to follow you or support your campaign, what are some ways that they can either engage with you on social media, or how do they get money to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
You're welcome.
SallyOwensForSenate.com. That's
Okay.
my website. Come on, join in. And there are lots of ways you can sign up as a volunteer. Yeah. Of course, it's a political website, so it's going to ask you for a donation.
Takes money to win.
That's right, absolutely. If you can give, great. Or if you just want to, be a volunteer or be a resource. I mean, I've had people call and say, "Hey, this is an issue that's really important to me," and then left me almost a resume of their expertise in that area, and I'm like, "Oh, cool." I mean, I love having a broad network of people and resources. So that's one way. I had talked to someone, kind of a high level political person, reached out to me and said, what are your pros? What are you really good at? What do you need help with? And I said, probably not great on social media. And they said, yeah, we went out and checked out your social media. So my social media is Sally Owens for Senate.
Well, let's pump it for everybody. Go follow Sally.
Yeah, go follow. That
would
be fantastic. But the one comment they made, they said, yeah, we looked up your social media. And I said, oh yeah, what'd you think of it? And he goes, authentic.
That's good.
That's what I thought.
Authentic, and you look just like Sandra Bullock.
Right. Oh yeah. I don't know about that, but it is genuine. I mean, that's me. That's me doing the post.
Yeah.
I'm not great at it, but I that's just a little flash of what I'm doing. I've got great people around me. I've got great supporters. People are showing up all the time, which is humbling. When someone comes to you and is willing to write you a check, or someone is coming to you and willing to say, I want to volunteer, and I'm proud of what you're doing. And so often I hear people say, thank you for running. Thank you for giving us a choice. It is humbling, but it's also motivating. It gets me going, because that to me is a sense of responsibility. I'm not in this to, I'm not in it to lose. I'll tell you that much. I'm working harder than I think most campaigns. I posted my quarterly. We have to do quarterly reports. I raised a significant amount of money. I raised more money than some of my other
Awesome.
cohorts out there. I worked really hard at it. It didn't just fall out of the trees from a fairy godmother. People in the community said, yep, you're worth it, we're behind you. But I've also knocked on 2,300 doors. If you include the 2,000 signatures I got to even get on the ballot, I've knocked on about 4,000 doors.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that myself. I'm not sending teams out to do it, although I will have volunteers helping me too. But for the most part, I'm doing it. And so when I talk about my passion for this district and my passion as to why I'm running, I'm hearing it from people on the doorstep. I'm hearing it from people when I talk about someone on a fixed income that's getting a 2.5% raise every year, and we talk about, you know, the salary increases that these people just gave themselves. I didn't make that up. That person on the doorstep actually said, "That's offensive. That's offensive. I'm on a fixed income. I'm retired, and I get a 2.5% raise, and they just gave themselves the equivalent of a 20% raise in 2 years. That's offensive." Those aren't my words. Those are their words.
Right.
So I know I'm on the right track. I know when I talk to people, the majority of the people are in agreement or supportive or leaning towards me. So I know it's doable. I know if we can encourage people to show up, we can make this happen. It's very doable.
Well, I'm super excited for you. I cannot wait to see the news we get in November. I got a good feeling that you're doing everything you got to do, and I just pray that means that there's positive things coming in November, and I can't wait to serve with you in Springfield. And thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody,
Thank you for having
seriously,
me.
please, Sally, what is it? Give them the website again.
Sally Owens for Senate.
Sally Owens for
.com.
Senate. Please give money, knock on doors. We need all the help we can get. This is a winnable race. We got a great candidate, and we got to help her get there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to The Good People Project.